Good morning, chat. We are live at VidCon with Congressman Ro Khanna. You're getting the backstage tour as we head out for our fireside chat. I hope everybody's as excited as I am.
A long entrance.
Very long. You get a lot of time to get your life going on this walk. I always think it's fascinating because I used to work in casinos when I lived in Las Vegas.
Oh, you did?
And they look just like this.
They do, actually, yeah.
So here's some fun facts. Did you know that just after 2017, Congressman Ro Khanna started a no PACs caucus that consisted of only 10 people in the entirety of Congress that don't take money from PACs? Did you know that? Fact. It's true. And he got a lot of grief for it. Good morning, everybody. Good morning. All right, we're going to do the awkward, weird stuff. Everybody tap and everybody share because we're going to be live from this fireside chat in just a few moments. Don't worry, guys. The tumor's not doing great today, but we're warming up. It's been a very, very talk-heavy week. I'm following 3 men that are not wearing heels, and it shows. Oh, this isn't as bad as my walk yesterday. I had to do the other end of the walk. That was rough. Hi, guys. Look.
Hey, guys. Thanks for tuning in.
Let's go, everybody. Thank you guys so much. Okay. Good morning, everyone. All right. Great. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. I know it was a late night last night. We thank you for getting up. Good morning, Lynn. Good morning, friends.
Oh no, it's just the cover slide. How you guys doing, Scott?
I'm Ro.
Good morning, Scott.
Good morning. So yeah, we're gonna do a handheld. Just so we start on time.
All right, guys, you're getting a front row seat. Yeah, I'm not going to do what he did. That was very impressive, though. Where's Ken? Oh, you want to bring it back? Good morning, yep. Oh, we're not working yet.
You guys are up.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for being here at our fireside chat. I'd like everybody to give a warm round of applause for Congressman Ro Khanna for coming a very long way to be here with us today. Congressman Khanna is the first politician to ever speak at any VidCon.
I'm honored.
That is a big deal because I'm going to be honest, I have proposed other politicians come, and it took us finding the right politician that wanted to come and talk about something that's important to everyone here, and that's that it's important that we talk to each other no matter what we believe. And so today we're going to be having a really amazing fireside chat on the importance of building bridges, not walls, and the importance of bipartisan conversations if you want reform to last, if you want meaningful reform. Many of you may be familiar with my channel. I host a live show called TikTok Town Hall. My channel is at Tiffany Cianci on TikTok, and I host politicians from all across the political spectrum, and we bring in bipartisan creators to ask them anything they like, to have real, open conversations about the things that impact all of us. And I was very, very humbled by the fact I could have started that had Representative Ro Khanna not been my first guest. He was the first person that ever came out to speak to me live, and he did so when I led the protest to save TikTok in Washington, D.C. And after 100,000 calls to the switchboard, he was the only politician that walked out to talk to us. And I was incredibly grateful, and I've been so grateful for the relationship we've had ever since. And we've talked about many, many things. And he and I agree on lots of things. We disagree on some things, but the conversations are always amazing, and I learn and grow every single time. So I wanted to bring him here. It was so exciting for me when they said yes, because I didn't think they ever would. And here we are.
Well, Tiffany, I was so moved and so appreciative that you invited me. I'm going to try not to mess it up for future politicians, so they'll allow future guests. But, you know, I think that what you're doing is so important because a lot of social media is optimized for anger, for attention, for insult. You know, if I take a jab at someone, I know that's going to be viral. If I say something nice about someone, usually he'll get like 10 likes. And what you're doing is trying to, in this space, create a place for real dialogue, for understanding each other despite difference. And we need so much more of that in this country. So thank you for what you're doing.
I'm going to try real hard not to be incredibly giddy about what he just said, because that's literally what I try to do every day. I'm also going to ask for indulgence. Most of my followers know I have a vocal tumor, and in the mornings it has a tough time. So if my voice is a little scratchy, I apologize, but I'm trying to use the time I have.
It's a beautiful voice, and and beautiful resilience that you're persistent in speaking out. You know, that's not everyone speaks out, and you're making the most of your voice.
As long as I have it, I'm going to use it. And that won't be forever, but for right now, we're going to make it count. With that, we're going to get started. Do you want me to call you Ro Khanna?
Ro is fine. Right. We're at VidCon. Ro works.
I just wanted to make sure. Ro, I just want to ask you just to start. You are somebody in Congress that I deeply admire. And I'm a registered independent. I'm not a Democrat. And I regularly communicate with both sides of the aisle, but so do you. Coming from the 17th Congressional District, which is a deeply blue congressional district, what is it that inspires you to constantly seek out bipartisan conversation, even though your district is largely blue?
You know, we're all a product of where we were born and raised, and I grew up in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, and that is, we got some Bucks.
So did our family.
All right, and I went to Council Rock High School there, and Bucks County, when I was growing up, was actually represented by a moderate Republican, a person named Jim Greenwood. And it's actually one of the most swing counties in the country. It's sometimes red, sometimes blue. But I was growing up with kids on our street on Amsterdam Avenue. You had kids of electricians, HVAC technicians. My dad was an engineer, doctors, nurses. There was a vice president of a big company. His house had the pool. Their house had the pool where we all went. And it was just a sense that everyone played Little League together, went to the Phillies games, played Stratomatic, and there wasn't the sense of, are you Republican, are you Democrat? It was more, you're American, you have something that you care about in this country. And I think that shaped me, and it shaped me both in a belief of this country, but also a belief that we have to try to find dialogue, where we agree, where we disagree. And I often think about the kids who I grew up with when I'm thinking about politics. How would they look at something? What would they think about something?
My husband's family grew up in Bucks County as well, and we're up in Doylestown and Quakertown all the time. And I grew up in a foster household in Las Vegas.
Wow.
And I grew up in a trailer park, and I was the first in my family to go to college, still the only one. And all of my beliefs were shaped the same way. When I was young, I had grandparents, and we were small business owners that lost everything when the government realigned the economy and devalued the peso. Their small businesses were at the San Diego National City border, and they lost 7 businesses in 4 months.
Oh my gosh.
Because 90% of their business came from Tijuana, and they lost everything.
With the Mexican crisis in the 90s, yes. I remember that.
They lost everything. Shortly after that, they took us to Las Vegas, and then they died shortly thereafter. But growing up, seeing hardworking small business owners lose everything to the decision of an economist somewhere shaped me. And today, I talk about complex economic matters every single day. I find regularly that while largely we are encouraged to believe that we are deeply divided as a nation, I always like to remind my listeners, my viewers, that historically, the most left-leaning individual on your street, somebody with maybe a pride flag and a BLM flag in their yard, and somebody at the other end of your street with maybe even a Confederate flag in their pickup truck, have on average 93% of their American values in common. And most people don't know that. It's only the 7% statistically that divides us, 3.5% on either side. And I find that increasingly we're encouraged to focus not that it's not important, the 3.5% as the thing we should use to motivate us to not care about one another, rather than the 93% to unite us in why we should have empathy for one another. And I keep seeing you go to these spaces where you talk about those same complex economic issues that are facing the working class. What is it that you want to talk about, or what do you talk about your viewers, your followers, your constituents, to bring them together? Because I watch you do it all the time.
I think that's so well put about the 93% that unite us. I mean, partly it's hard work. Right? Most Americans really work hard. It's a sense of freedom to be what we can be, and to say your kids can be something different than your family is. It's a sense of community. Americans care deeply about our neighbors, about charities, about faith. But the biggest challenge, I think, right now is how hard it's become for many people.
Yes.
To get a stable job that can support a family, to be able to afford a rent or a house, to be able to afford childcare, healthcare. It used to be, when I was growing up, that you had a good paying job because there was a lot of industry, there was a lot of manufacturing, you could support a family, it didn't cost as much to buy a house, it didn't cost as much for healthcare, and you really had hope that your kids would be better off than you were. That was why my parents immigrated to America from India, and I was born in Philadelphia. They have deep hope for their kids. That's how I was raised. And now you've got a country which I would say is half prosperous and half in decline, where you've got islands of prosperity and seas of despair. You have a district like mine in Silicon Valley, $14 trillion of value. 5 companies worth $1 trillion or more. Tesla, Google, Apple, NVIDIA, Broadcom. And then you have places in Pennsylvania that supported the economy totally hollowed out. Steel left in western Pennsylvania, manufacturing left. And people say, well, what's going to happen with it? Totally hollowed out. Steel left in western Pennsylvania, manufacturing left. And people say, well, what's going to happen with AI? And we need all of us to figure out how we do that for Team America.
You and I have talked about this a lot, because just going off of that answer, this is the first time in American history that more than 70% of the youth of America say they no longer believe that the American dream is waiting for them. And so often on my channel, maybe somebody on one side of the aisle is pushing me to say, pull yourself up by your bootstraps, and another side of the aisle is saying, go to college and get a better job. And then there's the overwhelming majority that fall somewhere in the middle that are saying, I did all those things, I'm doing both, and it's not getting better. But they do see that we keep enacting policies that increase wealth inequality. We keep enacting policies, no matter who's in charge really, that continue to siphon money out of the middle class. And it's getting harder and harder for the youth to see a future. But I know that you're working on some policies. You regularly engage in difficult conversations with the youth. And what do you say to your older constituents in your district? I don't want to say older, but like the more mature or the more financially secure constituents in your district that maybe don't understand perhaps what the youth of America is facing right now?
Well, one of the things I leave with is facts. This often startles people. The unemployment rate today for college graduates between the ages of 21 and 29 is 15%. So you go to college, you get $100,000 of debt. I took out huge loans when I went to college and law school. I was able to pay them back. But you take out all of this debt, and then you don't have a job. The reality is that with AI and technology, that's becoming even more difficult, because some of these jobs, entry-level jobs, are being automated. And then you can't afford rent. You can't afford to buy a house. The costs, you can't think of starting a family because it's $10,000, $12,000 a day of childcare. So what I've said is we need policies in this country with the federal and private sector that are, one, going to create good jobs. I propose one thing. I propose to the Future Workforce Administration, where we provide tax credits and incentives to have people hired as apprenticeships, so that they can get a start after college or after a vocational degree, and that they can even work for the government to build new institutions to help government service people better, to deal with healthcare, to deal with issues of climate, but they need to be employed in good paying jobs that can be stable. And that's something that right now doesn't exist.
I talk about this issue so often, and it wasn't on my list of questions, but since we're here, I'm going to go with it. You know, right now, my husband went to law school too. We came out of it with about $250,000 in debt. We paid $1,600 a month for close to 11 or 12 years, and it went up by almost $100,000. He is a federal employee, so we just got forgiveness, finally.
Yeah.
But it was the hardest 10 years of our lives. And so many amazing lawyers that went to law school with him didn't get that chance. And I don't know if they're ever gonna be able to pay off those loans. I have so many friends that are desperately, they took part-time government jobs just to hope for it, because there are so many career paths now that require immense debt to do good. You wanna be a teacher, it requires immense debt, and that's really difficult. And we've had this promise for such a long time that there would be good paying jobs waiting on the other side. But we've watched as the average cost of living has doubled and the average pay has increased by 14%, right? Like, I don't know if that's the right number in every district, but you know, in that same time frame. And when we're watching this huge disparity in the increased cost of things, we're watching this huge disparity in the increase of pay and the way that those line up. It's so hard for young people to reconcile why people are saying the economy is good, because for some people it's good. For people that have huge 401ks, it's doing very well. The stock market says it's great, but for 15% unemployed new graduates, and for young people that are paying $1,000 a month to their student loans and living in their mom's basement, or in an apartment with 3 roommates at 33, it doesn't feel good. And they're worried that maybe their members of Congress aren't listening to them or aren't realizing that's what they're going through. You do realize it, you talk about it all the time. How can they participate in helping or in engaging with their politicians to get them to understand like you do? What can we do?
Well, it's a level of frustration, right? Because it's not just that they aren't getting the good paying jobs and then they're in debt. And I know what that feels like, having seen debt of over $100,000, and then you keep making the monthly payments, the number keeps going up or it doesn't come down. And then in some years where I had to take forbearance in my 20s, and it's challenging. Now I had the benefit of having a good paying job, but now that's becoming even harder. And then what's so frustrating to these young folks is they see our political system and they see it's just awash with money. That even if they speak out, even if they put something on social media, even if they share their experience, they feel that it's going to be the super PACs that have millions of dollars that are going to call the shots. It's going to be the lobbyists that call the shots. And whether a Democrat comes or Republican comes, their lives aren't changing. And that's been the story in this country. We keep throwing everyone out every 2 years since the early 2000s. We keep voting for change every time because people aren't getting the change in their lives. So what can bring this change? The first thing in my view is we've got to fight to get the big money out of politics. We've got to ban super PACs, make it that people can't be making these huge contributions, ban lobbyists from giving money, tell members of Congress they can't go become lobbyists after public service, get money out of politics. The second thing is, I think you need politicians to listen more. You know, I know everyone in politics is like, oh, do you have charisma? Like, you command the attention of a room. How about we just have people who are there to listen, who are actually there to listen to people? Your job is to represent. It's not always just to be this bombastic, charismatic leader. Your job is to listen. And I think we need to have more conversations with folks to see where they're hurting, and then figure out, well, what can we do about it? And some of these solutions are obvious. I mean, raising the wage for people, making sure that we are investing with federal-private partnerships and creating good jobs everywhere, making sure that people do have a chance for an apprenticeship or a job when they graduate, investing in our trade schools, because a lot of those trade schools are going to lead to good paying jobs. Having, in my view, universal health care. I mean, so that you have health care from the day that you're born. We're producing more wealth than ever before. My district is going to be fine in terms of the affluent. They're producing more wealth than they know what to do with. The question is, why can't we make sure that everyone is participating in that economic independence and success?
You're one of just a handful of politicians in Congress that don't accept money from PACs. And So I agree with you. PACs have to go. The money in politics has to go. The problem is it's going to take a constitutional amendment, right? And that's the problem after Citizens United. And that's a very difficult process. I keep hoping, and you know, you can hope or you can act, and I'm trying to do both. I keep hoping we're going to find a path back that's going to bring politicians back to their constituents the way you're coming back to your constituents. I've worked in politics a long time. I used to work in the Senate. I worked in the state Senate. And when I look around and I see sort of the showboating that's taking place at this point in a lot of ways, there's a lot of vitriol in the comments. There's a lot of vitriol on the news shows. When I'm in the halls, they're besties, right? They're frenemies. How do we get them to stop being so vitriolic, like everybody else in Congress, and start talking to each other? Is there something we can do? How can we stimulate that aside from a constitutional amendment? Because we know money's driving those conversations. I tell my viewers very regularly that right now, since 2010 forward, the moment corporations realized they could buy the politicians, they also realized they would have to pay to keep us so divided we wouldn't stop them. And I don't want us to stay that divided, but the division works to keep us from focusing on the corporations, on the big money, on the consolidation, and on the power they're buying. How do we get politicians back to the table?
Well, first of all, obviously to get rid of super PACs, we need a constitutional amendment, but you can regulate the amount of money people give to super PACs. Right now, people can't give more than $3,500 an election to a politician. Why is it that they can then go give $250 or $300 million to a super PAC? One of the bills that I have introduced is to say that a politician, an individual can't give more to a super PAC than they can give to a politician, at least regulate that. And that, it would be constitutional, it wouldn't require a constitutional amendment. But beyond limiting money, look, I do think that the content creators and social media and TikTok can change the conversation for the better. The reality is TV is becoming less and less important. It matters, but less and less important. And that means that just raising tons of money to put on TV ads, because that's really where the money goes. It goes on these huge expenditures for television. That's when money started to take even a bigger role in politics. Well, now if you can have a viral video of something that strikes a chord without much upfront cost to produce it and without paying a lot of money to distribute it, that starts to change the game. And we see this in terms of people who are rising up and having a voice. A lot of times it's not the people who are spending the most money, it's the people who have most traction with an online grassroots space with content creators. And so the hope is that there'll be more content creators, more people like you, more citizens like you, who will say, you know what, I want something different in my politics. I want people who are going to work to solve the issue of medical debt, or I want someone who's going to work to solve the issue of good paying jobs. And I'm going to highlight those type of conversations. And I think we can build that kind of a citizen movement. Americans are exhausted and embarrassed by the state of the current politics. And content creators have a role to play. Just like we need a new generation of leaders in this country, we need a new generation of influencers. It can't be the same pundit class. It can't be the same conversations that we're having on media. It's got to be a little more fresh, novel, interesting, human. And that's, I think, the hope for a better politics.
One of the things that I keep telling people when I get asked on the panels I'm sitting on, yesterday a friend of mine, V, asked me, why is it you keep talking to people from both sides of the aisle? I couldn't do it, but I love it, and it also scares the crap out of me, is what they said. And I said, because in our divisions, it fosters the ability for business as usual to continue, because as long as we're fighting one another, we're not working together to fight the mechanisms that are keeping things the same and the status quo. You talk to me, you talk to everyone. You've also been fighting for TikTok so we can have these conversations, right? But when we're having these bipartisan conversations, you're civil, you're polite. A lot of the creators that are online see more growth when they go to the right or the left. It's easier to gain followers when you lean far right or you lean far left, even just more right or more left. It's a lot harder to grow when you stay purple. Trust me, it's a lot harder. What would you say to the creators that are starting, maybe not to be a political creator, but to be a change maker? What would you say to them to encourage them to have conversations on both sides, or would you?
Building things is always harder than tearing things down.
Yeah.
You know, I once read a book, a famous philosophy book in college, and I, as a hot-headed young student, wrote an essay saying, this is the most ridiculous theory in all these places where it's wrong. And my teacher, the professor, said, okay, you may be right, and why don't you try writing the theory? Why don't you say what your ideas are? It's always easy to tear someone down. It's much harder to put something out yourself. And if you're engaged in tapping people's anger and frustration and outrage, you are going to build an audience because people are angry and they are frustrated and they are outraged. And politicians who are too glib about that are not going to connect. But if that's all we do as a country, we're not going to actually make any change. The element of leadership that we need is to channel that anger and frustration and say, okay, how are we going to be constructive? How are we going to build something? How are we going to have some sense of new common purpose? And our great leaders, whether it was people like Dr. King or Lincoln or others, or ordinary citizens, they were the people we admire are builders. They're people who want to have a constructive influence on the community. So I guess I would say is, you know, if your metric is just how do you grow your following the fastest, maybe talking to people who disagree with you is not the best way. But if your metric is how do you have some sense of respect and contribution to the country, to the community, to where you live, then having these conversations, you'll see people will come up to you and say, wow, you know, you really made a difference in my life. And I know many content creators have that experience. People who come up and talk about how they had a difference in their mental health, how they had their difference when they were going through hard times with their family, how they had a difference in terms of some education they pursued. So it's what do you want to do? Do you want to have a contribution, or do you want just fleeting fame? And I think most people deep down want a contribution.
I'm so happy you said that. Sorry, guys. I just like hearing anybody say it but me. I'm so excited. This is, I want to take a moment to ask why you've been so passionate about saving TikTok. I know why I've been so passionate. We met at the Save TikTok protest I led in DC. You have done video after video with me. You've come on TikTok Town Hall. You've introduced legislation. That's where a lot of these young people are making a difference. It's what inspires me. It's a place where I'm able to make a difference, and I believe that. Why are you so inspired to save TikTok? Why is it you're so inspired to give voice to these young people?
Well, it's freedom of speech. It's 175 million Americans who have speech on that platform, and it's a lot of young people who have speech. You can't have politicians go and give speeches saying, young people, we need you to get involved. Then they finally get involved on TikTok, and they say, well, we don't like what you're saying, so we're going to take TikTok away from you. I mean, that is the height of hypocrisy, and it will lead to more cynicism among young people saying, we finally found a voice, and now they're trying to take it away. I was very proud of being one of the first people in Congress to say no to the TikTok ban, and I voted against the TikTok ban when it came up. Now more people are saying, oh, okay, let's find a way to keep people online, and it's becoming more popular. But that bill should never have passed. We should have found a way to make sure Americans' data is secure. We should have found a way to make sure that the Chinese Communist Party can't interfere with the algorithm. There were all ways to do that. We didn't need to have the app literally go dark. We don't need to be giving content creators anxiety every 90 days whether they're going to lose their livelihood. You know, there are 1.5 million people in this country who make a living in some form, part-time or full-time, as content creators.
And 7.1 million small businesses that rely on TikTok for their income.
Yeah, I mean, that's a crazy number. I mean, consider, I'm for building more of our steel industry. There's 70,000 people who work in steel. There are 1.5 million in content creation. And you're going to tell people who are getting an extra $500 a month of making rent that now we're going to shut down TikTok. And you're not going to be able to do that, or you're not going to be able to speak out against people in this country or other countries because you disagree with their policies. It's wrong. And so I have a bill to repeal this TikTok ban so that we don't have every 90 days to go through the anxiety of, is Donald Trump going to give an extension? Is Trump going to find a solution? And I hope that we can get the support for repealing this ban. You can't call yourself free speech for free speech and then be for banning TikTok.
When I am on TikTok regularly, I get asked constantly, how long is this going to go on? How long is this going to go on? Is there an insight? I don't know there is right now, but what can people do to support that particular initiative?
Well, they can use their platforms to say to other members of Congress, get on Ro Khanna's TikTok repeal bill. Make sure that we get 100 co-sponsors to repeal that TikTok ban. The more visibility there is in Congress, the better the chance we can actually pass the legislation. And even if we don't pass the legislation, it puts political pressure on the administration to say we've got to solve this. I do believe that the president actually wants to solve this. I don't think he wants to ban TikTok.
I think so too.
But we've got to make sure that there's an urgency. That people think, okay, it just keeps getting extended. They don't know, you know this, because you talk to content creators, how unnerving that is. Every day every time the extension is coming up. Because we don't know. It could be one day that Trump says, I couldn't do the deal, it's done. So we need to make sure that this gets done fast and that Congress is out there speaking out for keeping the platform open.
If it's okay with you, I'd like to pivot to a topic you brought up earlier.
Yeah.
Which is one that I talk about very aggressively. One of the things that I talk about on my channel all the time is monopolization, consolidation in our economy, and private equity consumption of the middle class.
Right.
I heard all my followers just now, did you hear the gas? They're like, oh, it's coming. I work really hard to expose the risks of monopolies, consolidation, and the way that it's diminishing the potential for people to move between the working and middle and small business ownership class in America. You've talked about trades, you've talked about apprenticeships. I don't know how much you know about the fact that in some metropolitan areas, 76 to 80% of many of the HVAC companies, roofing companies, plumbing companies have been acquired and built into mini monopolies by these private equity firms. But I do know you talk about consolidation.
Yeah.
And one of the things that is happening while we're busy fighting with each other constantly is that we have a regulatory system that is trying its best to keep up with antiquated, outdated antitrust laws. And no one in Congress, not no one, but most of Congress is so busy doing whatever they do that is not helping all of us,
Right.
that we're not making any progress in helping small businesses to stick around. Now, you're an exception. I see several other Congress members that talk to me regularly that are an exception, but nothing is happening to update antitrust laws. We just saw an administration that disappointed me greatly and removed 2 people at the FTC that were doing good work. 2 people I supported from the Biden administration. Again, I'm purple. I've always said that I want both sides working, and I want to know what you see needs to be done to help protect the small businesses we just talked about, the trades that we just talked about, and the economy from this overwhelming consolidation and sort of wealth redistribution we're experiencing because of it.
Well, it's a huge issue because it's taking away the economic independence for ordinary families. It now becomes so hard to build a successful small business or to be a successful worker with a nest egg if you have these huge corporations that are sucking up a lot of the profits. Let me give you 2 concrete examples. One, on housing. You've got private equity, Wall Street, buying up single-family homes.
Yes.
This is happening particularly in places like Las Vegas. And it's pricing out working and middle-class families. I have a bill, Stop the Corporate Landlord Act, which would prohibit your and my tax dollars subsidizing Wall Street to buy up single-family homes. It's unconscionable. We didn't fight a revolution to be serfs to Wall Street when it came to owning a house.
No, we did not.
The second thing is that we need to support a robust antitrust division. Lena Khan, in my view, did good work. She was praised by Vice President Vance when he was a senator.
I'm her biggest fan.
And what she was saying is that you can't have this kind of consolidation in construction, in roofing, in HVAC, in agriculture, in technology, that when you have such consolidation of industry, you give the employer a lot of the bargaining power, because workers then don't have a choice. If you're a roofer, if you're an HVAC technician, you can't put out a shingle and start your own business and compete. And you can't leave this big corporation and say, I'm going to go somewhere else, because the competition doesn't exist. That means that the large corporation has all of the power. It suppresses wages. It makes it harder for working and middle-class Americans to build any independent business. And it's concentrating wealth at the top. We need stronger antitrust laws, but mostly we need stronger antitrust enforcement.
Yes.
And that means putting in people who are really going to enforce those laws like Lina Khan did.
What you just said is one of those policies that about 95% of Americans agree with. There are a lot of policies 90 to 95% of Americans agree with. There are several policies 98% of Americans agree with. But we also have all seen the metric that was just released that says that if 98% of Americans agree with the policy, you have a less than 30% chance that Congress will pass it. But if 90% of billionaires agree with the policy, you have a 95% chance that Congress will pass it in the following 4 years. What do we do with that? How do we bring people? I don't want to say people. Congress has to start listening to their constituents. They agree with you. We all agree with you. This is a common sense thing. Right now, these private equity funds, Blackstone is one of the worst offenders, are buying up massive swaths of entire new divisions of housing to turn them into rental communities. And if the value goes down, rather than putting them on the market where we would get a real valuation and pricing would normalize, they're flipping them on something called the secondaries market, where they trade them with another private equity firm at an inflated price so that none of the housing will come down ever. They're doing it with companies too. Rather than getting a fair market valuation, they're flipping them on something called the secondaries market, trading them with each other like Pokemon cards at an inflated valuation. And so we're not seeing real valuation in the economy or in the housing market. And the people that are paying are the working class. The people that are paying are the people that need a new HVAC unit, but somebody bought 78% of locations and fixed the prices and tripled them. We want our politicians to listen. You're engaging in these conversations. Should we just encourage people to run for office? Can they afford to? What do we do to get these 98% policies actually enacted? How do we back you to get this done in a meaningful way?
We need to recognize that the country has deep divisions in certain issues when it comes to culture and social issues, but that we shouldn't fixate on those divisions and beating up on each other. We should recognize that the central challenge for the country is a rigged economic system that has led to the abandonment of communities, to working and middle-class Americans losing stability, losing security, and losing hope for their kids. And we need to orient our politics around unrigging that economy, to getting the economy to work not just for the tech millionaires and billionaires in my district, but getting the economy to work for working and middle-class Americans. And to do that, we should be able to come together on an economic agenda that can get broad support. In my view, those things are raise the wage, stop Wall Street from buying up housing, make sure that if you're a young person, there is some apprentice or job at the end of your trade school or at the end of college. Make sure that there's some tax penalty if you're going to offshore jobs or offshore plants, and that we're actually having the tax incentives to build here. That if you build in Western Pennsylvania or Ohio, we're going to buy from you, we're going to finance you, but if you're not willing to do that and you're going to offshore these jobs or you're not willing to invest there, you're not going to get the same federal contracts or tax credits. So I think that there can be an economic agenda that the vast majority of Americans support, and if they evaluate our candidates based on that agenda, then we have a real chance of getting that through. But a lot of times people don't want to talk about that because that's hard. That's going up against wealth. It's going up against power. So they focus on the other issues which are important, but which distract people from the economic structural change that's needed.
I think that's so incredibly well said. There is coming a moment I'm seeing, and I'd like to know if you are seeing the same. we have a seasoned Congress. We have a very experienced Congress right now that is doing a lot of business as usual, and in their seniority, I think, are getting further and further away from understanding what the youth are going through. But I also see immense possibility in the reality that we're losing a lot of them, and people have to come in and replace them. The thing that worries me the most is that I believe we have a young generation. A lot of people don't, but I disagree. We have a young generation that has more access to knowledge, understanding, and communication than any generation in history.
Totally agree with that.
And I believe that while we have barriers to entry in politics, primarily just money, there are huge barriers to entry that are money. I do believe that we have young generations that are coming right now that are fierce and are tired, but not so tired that they don't want to do something about it. They're exhausted, but I think that they're exhausted at waiting. And so I would ask, what would you do to encourage the younger generations of America to prepare themselves, maybe if they don't have $1 million to run? How are we going to get them in office? What can we do to get them to activate on both sides of the aisle? Because I am seeing more cooperation in younger politicians than I ever see in the older ones.
Well, first of all, this is the best time to run because there's one consensus in America, and that is everyone wants the old guard out.
Yes.
They're tired of the politicians who've been there 50, 60 years. You know, I've been working to try to stop this war in Iran with Thomas Massey.
Yes.
And one of the things I've said on television is anyone who supported the Iraq war, we really shouldn't be listening to them about whether we get into war in Iran. And someone said to me, well, the reason we shouldn't be listening to the people who cheered on the war in Iraq is that was 20 years ago. What are they still doing in office, right? I mean, it's not just that they had the wrong judgment. It's that some of these people, you look at them, and it's not an insult, but they literally first won office in 1975, 74, I mean, before I was born. I'm 48 years old. They won office before I was born, and they're still there. And so the American people are sick of this. They want new blood. You can almost run a campaign saying, I'm the new guy, and new woman, new person, and you're likely to do well. And so just be bold and know that you may lose your first time. I lost twice before I won. And it ended up making me a better public servant. But now, yes, you need money, but a lot of times there are upsets. If you can build a big following on social media, if you build a big following in your community, if you run on change, even if you don't win, you'll set yourself up to eventually win, to eventually have impact. And I just feel this is the time. If you're young in this country, I can feel it's sort of like after the Eisenhower years, we had the Kennedy years. I feel there is this hunger for a new generation of leadership on both sides of the aisle.
I agree with you. I couldn't agree with you more. One of the things that I keep seeing in your comment section, because I'm there a lot, I share all your content.
The bad comments or the good ones?
I really focus on the ones that are discussing issues. That's really, because I like to make my videos off of comments I see in your content. And so one of the things that I see a lot in your comment section is that when you engage in bipartisan conversations, while you'll see pundits maybe criticize you, while you might see some of the more power-hungry players in the parties criticize you, I see that your constituents, they support you. You were the only Democrat that went to Melania and Trump's trafficking summit. That is an issue everyone agrees on. When you came out of it, you got a lot of criticism. But I read the comments. Your constituents were like, yeah, we want him there. Do you believe that by engaging in bipartisanship, that you are being a more effective leader for your constituents and that you're securing ongoing support from your constituency? Or is it maybe one or the other?
I do, because I think it's the only way that you can be effective. You don't have to compromise your principles, but when there is something that you have to learn from the other side, or something where you can work together with the other side to improve people, then you should. To me, it's not very complicated. When the First Lady invited me to participate in a roundtable to make sure that AI couldn't create sexually explicit images about our teenagers, and that we required internet companies to take those down, I thought, okay, as a Silicon Valley member of Congress, I believe in that. I want to contribute to that, so I'm going to show up. I was shocked no other Democrat showed up. And
Me too.
The point is, you can, people say, well, resist. I said, well, resist, if you believe Trump's actions in some cases, which I do, are unconstitutional, resist those. Resist the actions he's taking to cut funding. But don't resist the First Lady if she's doing something that's going to help people. And I have a metric in how I approach politics that if someone is doing something that I think is going to help this country, help people, I will work with them, I will engage. And I also have the sense that I don't have a monopoly on the truth. Think about it, we're a country of 330 million people, a nation of almost 250 years that has overcome the British monarchy, the Civil War, the rise of fascism and Nazism, the rise of communism. It is the utter act of arrogance to be one citizen, whether you're a senator, president, congressperson, a city council member, influencer, and think, I know everything I need to know about where America should go. How do you? How could you, in a nation of 330 million people with a history we have a degree of humility, have a sense of your own blind spots, have a sense that the participation in American democracy and engagement with the other side is not just necessary to get things done, it's actually what will lead to better leadership, to better outcomes, because collectively the American judgment over time is better and more durable than the judgment of any single individual.
You know, there was a quote you posted, I think when it was still Twitter, that made me inspired to start talking to your office to hope that I can meet with you. I'm going to read it. Our nation needs debate based on respect, listening, and empathy to try and seek true understanding. That was years ago. And you're still here doing that today. I think there's a moment right now, and I don't want to get super political, I'd rather stay more unifying, but there's a moment right now where I'm not going to say across the political parties I'm seeing intense unanimity, but I am seeing intense unanimity across, I'm going to say the 40 and under generations on both sides of the aisle about what we're being tested with regarding this war, regarding wealth inequality. There's so much that unites us. What is it that you would say, leaving as one last statement to all of the people that are watching this, about what we can do to lean into that instead of taking the bait to push one another away?
I think what unites this country in many ways is to have a vision of peace abroad and good jobs at home that are going to support a middle-class life. Many Americans, regardless of politics, want that in our politics. They realize that for the last 25 years we've had failures in our foreign policy, wars that have added to our national debt, where too many people have died that haven't helped communities here. And they realize that there are a lot of places in America that have lost jobs, whether even though unemployment is low, it's high for young people, and the jobs that people are getting are paying $17, $18 an hour without full health benefits, not $30, $35 an hour to support a family. How do we rebuild our economy? How do we make sure that we're a moral force for peace in the world again? That's something that can start to bring the country together. But I believe fundamentally what this country is so desperate for is a common national mission again. When my parents came to America, those were the Kennedy years. We were humming, we were building things, we were the leader of the world. This was the place to be. And we are desperate for that kind of leadership, that kind of vision. That's not going to come just from people in Congress or the Senate. That's going to come from the people listening here, saying, you know what, I want something fresh. I want something new. We don't have to replicate the old insults back and forth. We're going to try to inspire people to remember what this country is capable of and offer new dreams, new possibilities, a new purpose for America. I think if you do that, you're going to see that the response is much, much bigger than you thought. If you're just going to insult each other, that's kind of unoriginal. An approach that tries to offer something new, more hopeful, I think is actually, people are desperate for it.
Well, for what it's worth, when people push me to be more left or more right, I tell them I want to be like Ro. So with that, I'm going to ask everybody to join me in thanking Congressman Ro Khanna for being here with us today.
Thank you for what you're doing. Really nice.
Everybody, come on over. Thank you so much. Come over and take a picture. We're going to stand right here, and we're going to come on up. I don't know who does it, but we're going to do it right here. All right, stand here. Luke, you got me? Your team's coming. We got this. Beautiful.
That was great.
Everyone watching live online, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Wonderful. Bro, I think we're gonna go back to the bathroom. I'd love to chat with you on the way. Girls, thank you so much for joining us. I love that. I would love to join you. Thank you. My heart. You are. So nice to meet you.
But I think what we need is to get more with the content creators out there.
Good. Hi there. Hi, Tiffany. So nice to meet you. Thank you. I'm nice to meet you as well.
Great. Have you been? Yes.
No.
Do you know?
No, but I'd love to.
Yeah. So, working with you,
So will you also be around the school outside? Lynn, your pick, my girl. You're an undergraduate ever. Hold on, let me spin this. Guys, I'm still here. We're here. We're over here. I'm gonna be out on the floor just a little bit.
Sounds good. Yes, I want to have a conversation with you about education currently as like
Say no more. I'm yours. Awesome. Hi, Amy. Oh, you want a hug? Okay. No, go ahead. No, go ahead. Hi. I'm so glad. So glad. Good idea. Where we start, not where we finish. Okay, how will be tomorrow? We'll try together. Tomorrow. Kaylin, hello. So good to see you.
It's so good again.
Nice to see you so much.
Yes. Thank you. I sent you after.
You have this first.
I'll send you after this.
Beautiful. Thank you so much.
Terrific, that'd be great. Thank you so much. It's great to hear that.
This gentleman's from the 17th district.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful.
Oh, that's perfect. I would love to. Let's do it. We got plans. I didn't have a clock, so I was panicking like 4 times. Normally there's a big clock, and there was no clock. Like, you know where you're at. Yes, perfect. Perfect. She steals this purse from me all the time because it's Disney.
I saw it on the ground over here, so.
Thank you so much. Hold on, guys. I'm turning it around. I'm going to bring you with me. Hello, friends. Hello.
Good luck. It's all vertical now. I just want to say it was awesome.
Thank you so much. So good to see you. I'll be out there on the floor. I'll see you in a little bit. Thanks for coming.
My pleasure.
Hey, guys. How did I do? Did I do okay? Hi, Clover. I hope you guys enjoyed it. All right, everybody. I'm going to go off live for a while, but I'll be back on probably in a couple hours. I love you guys. Thank you for taking me from guest last year to Fireside Chat speaker this year. I'm so grateful, and I will see you guys soon. Love you guys.